Let's get to our panel next. Joining me now, I believe I've got Simon Banks and Kerry Chikarovsky to talk through, well, an interesting and a slightly varied day in politics, I guess you could say. Let's start off with the Labor review, though, because why not? It's coming, it's finally here. Simon, well ahead of Christmas for all those people interested in the machinations of the Labor Party. How do you think this has been handled? It's going to be a couple of days, we'll get the review, and then Albo will be taking questions at Press Club. Look, they're not trying to sweep it under the carpet, I guess. That's the plus here.
Yep, no, like I think he's fronting up, but I think what you'll find with Albo's speech to the Press Club on Friday, I think he's going to be casting it forward. I mean, of course, there are lessons to be learned from the last election campaign. I think most of us probably figured them out around about 7:30 on election night, what had gone wrong. I think the main issue now and what the Australian people are going to care about is, well, what is the Labor Party going to offer in 2.5 years' time when it next comes up to an election? What's going to be its vision? What are going to be the practical measures that it's going to do to make the lives of Australians better? That'll be the focus. As I said, I don't think the so-called quiet Australians will be crying in their beer tomorrow night having read the ALP report, because most of them won't read the ALP report.
I suspect you might be right there. Look, I guess you can say about what Labor's going to do, and yes, they'll need to outslide some things ahead of the next election, but you'd suspect a good chunk of the lead up to the next election will just be the old school way of being an opposition, right? Just trying to pick apart the other side. They've got a few issues with the economy, for example, and how that goes.
Yep, absolutely right. I mean, yeah, that is the basic point. I mean, governments in Australia tend to lose elections rather than oppositions winning them as such. So the Labor Party's got to focus on its day job first, which is being a good opposition for a while, and I think you've already seen some signs from that in the Parliament so far this year. But of course it does have to refresh the policy suite, come up with ideas that are attractive, particularly to Middle Australia in the outer suburbs of our cities and major regional centres around the country. Clearly the party didn't ultimately do that well enough 6 months ago, but that's going to be the task for 2.5 years' time. But that's Scott Morrison's task too.
Yeah, look, I guess, first of all, on this Labor review, Kerry, we understand this can be a bit of a write-off politically. 2019 for Labor, they're going through these motions, but they're necessary ones.
Yeah, look, and I think it's going to be interesting. I agree with you that probably the vast majority of Australians won't be reading this report with any great interest, but I do think there'll be a lot of interest, both within the media, of course. They always like a good yarn. They want to know, who they're going to point the finger at, who's going to be blamed for what was quite an unexpected result. But I also think internally there'll be some interest in this report because, I'm not close to the Labor Party in the same way Simon is, but I've had some conversations with people within the Labor Party, and there was a fair bit of angst even 4 or 5 weeks ago about the fact that people within the party felt that they weren't being listened to during the campaign and indeed running up to the campaign. So I think what will be an interesting part of this report will be what will be the processes that the party itself will adopt to make sure that its own membership, and I'm not just talking the parliamentary party, but they're key, but also that their own membership are being listened to. Because my understanding is that people felt that they were basically being ignored during that campaign, and that when they were reporting things back like, these policies aren't going down well, they were basically being pushed to the side and said, look, we've got this all under control. So in terms of what Simon's talking about, the policies for the next election, I think that they will be within the Labor Party, as there should be within all political parties. There should be a fair bit of soul searching and then testing within their own membership so that they can work out whether these things are, well, first of all, practical, and secondly, whether they're going to be politically popular.
And look, regardless of where they go in policy, it seems inevitable it's going to be smaller target, if not necessarily small target, and that means more of a focus again on the government. And the overwhelming sense is a lot of people voted against what Labor had to offer at the last election. And this does mean more of a focus, doesn't it, on the coalition and a challenge, for example, just on the economy, that it's got to be ticking along well. It's not just about a budget surplus, and the focus goes back on Scott Morrison.
And I think one of the things that the Labor Party were doing quite well at the last election was that they were actually kind of emphasising that, the guy with 2 kids in a family didn't feel as if they were actually benefiting in any great way from what we were constantly being told was a good, strong, solid economy. So I think it'll be that sort of messaging that they're going to need to look at. They're going to look at what the government is doing you know, for the people who we used to refer to as, you know, John Howard's aspirational class. Are the government addressing their concerns? And if not, can the Labor Party hold them to account over that? And clearly one of the other parts of this, of course, will be drought, and hopefully it won't be going on for the next couple of years, but addressing people's concerns there. But it will be all about whether they, you know, the government is addressing the concerns of aspirational Australians, and if not, what can the Labor Party do to make it better for them should they get elected?
Well, not long to go now until we can all flick through the copy and see what happened, even if Simon Banks figured it out, as we heard, on 7:30 on election night.